वक्रतुंड महाकाय सूर्यकोटिसमप्रभ निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा। सरस्वती नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणि विद्यारम्भं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा। गुरवे सर्वलोकानां विषजे भवरोगिणां निधये सर्वविद्यानां दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। साक्षात्कृतं दयानन्दं परमार्थस्वरूपिणं तत्त्वज्ञानप्रशास्तारं प्रणतोऽस्मि परं पदम्। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। Class number 33. You can repeat. Vasudevendra Yogindram
वासुदेवेन्द्र योगीनां
Natva Jnanapradam Gurum
दत्याज्ञानं प्रदं गुरुं
Mukshunam Hitartaya
मुमुक्षूणां हितार्थाय
Tattva Bodho Vidhiyate Sadhana Chatushtaya Sampannadikarinam Moksha Sadhana Bhutam Tattva Viveka Prakaram Vakshyamaha. Sadhana Chatushtayam Kim
साधन चतुष्टयं किं
Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivekaha
नित्यानित्यविवेकः
Mutrartha Phalabhoga Viragaha Samadhi Shatka Sampattihi Mukshutvam Cheti. Is my voice clear?
Yes, Guruji.
Yes, Guruji.
Yes, Guruji.
Your voice is not clear. Some disturbance is there. Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivekaha Kaha Nitya Vastu Ekam Brahma वस्तु एकं ब्रह्म
ब्रह्मा
तद्व्यतिरिक्तं सर्वम् अनित्यम्
तद्व्यतिरिक्तं सर्वम् अनित्यम्
यम् एव नित्यानित्यवस्तु विवेकः
अयम् एव नित्यानित्यवस्तुविवेकः
विरागकः
विरागः
स्वर्गभोगेषु इच्छाराहित्यम्
इह सर्वभोगेषु इच्छाराहित्यम्
समाधिषट्कसम्पत्तिः का शमः दमः उपरमः
दमः उपरमः
तितिक्षा श्रद्धा समाधानं च इति
तितिक्षा श्रद्धा समाधानं च इति
शमः कः
शमः कः
मनोनिग्रहः
मनोनिग्रहः
दमः कः
तमः
चक्षुरादि इन्द्रियनिग्रहः
चक्षुरादीन्द्रियनिग्रहः
परमः कः
परमः कः
स्वधर्मानुष्ठानम् एव
स्वधर्मानुष्ठानम् एव
तितिक्षा का
तितिक्षा
शीतोष्णसुखदुःखादि सहिष्णुत्वम् श्रद्धा कीदृशी गुरुवेदान्तवाक्येषु विश्वासः श्रद्धा समाधानं किम् चित्तैकाग्रता मुमुक्षुत्वं किम् मोक्षो मे भूयात् इति इच्छा एतत् साधनचतुष्टयम् ततः तत्त्वविवेकस्य अधिकारिणः भवन्ति Okay, there's some problem in your side, Mike. I don't know what the problem is. Anyway, so you can keep the mic in mute. If you have any problem in hearing me, then you can let me know. We are discussing on the topic of sadhana chatushtayam. And in that sadhana chatushtayam, we are in the third sadhanam, which is a group of 6. Among that, we are saying the first one, Shama. The third one is Shamadhi Shatkam, Shama, etc. A group of 6 sadhanams, which is a third sadhanam among the 4 sadhanams. And in the third sadhanam, the first one, first among the Shatkam is Shamaha. We have been discussing on this Shama. And we have seen the definition of Shama. Shama is Mano Nigraha. And before we proceed, the recitation of Tattvabodha is there in the channel. It is for you to practice. You can listen to the audio and practice reciting the Tattvabodha. It is very good to commit to memory because it covers all the definitions of the words used in Vedanta. So if you know, if you can memorize it, will be very good. It's a simple text, so therefore it can be memorized. Just reciting it. Recite that regularly. After a few days, you will find it committed to memory. So it's available, you can see. Now, Shamaha. Shamaha is Nigraha. The word Nigraha, they have translated the word Nigraha as management, not control, management. Management of the mind. We are given different interpretations of the word Mano Nigraha, mind management, making the mind available, availability of the mind, alertness of the mind. All these are the definitions of Shama. Making the mind available, availability of the mind. Availability of the mind for the pursuit of Vedanta. In our context, it is Vedanta. That is called Shamaha. Making the mind available. Why the mind should be made available? Because it is not available. It is not available now for me. Now I'm engaging in a particular task, a particular action, or particular activity. For that, the mind should be available. Why the mind is not available? Because the mind is brooding over the past. The mind is brooding over the memories of the past. The mind is living on the past, living on the memories or the emotions or the experiences or the experienced emotions of the past. The mind is living on the past, it is not in the present. Or the mind is living on the future. It is contradictory, but it is. That's what mind does also. Mind is living on the future. The future has not yet come, but mind is living. You are projecting your future, and mind is living on that. The mind projects the future. The future is yet to come, but mind reaches the future and living on that. So either it lives in the past or lives in the future. But the now, the present, in the present, mind is not available. That is called non-availability of the mind. Lack of Shama. Mind is not available means it is either brooding over the past. If the past is pleasant, if the past anubhava, if the experiences of the past are pleasant, the mind revels in that, enjoys in the experiences of the past. Or if it is pain, or if the experiences are not pleasant, if it is painful, then also mind lives. Mind lives on those experiences, those emotions, and experiencing the past pain now. Experiencing the past pain now. The pain had come and already we experienced, it has gone. What is the need for to experience the past pain now and living it now? But mind does that. Similarly, the mind plans for the future. The mind plans for the future action. If the pain is caused by someone, now the mind plans to retaliate, to give retaliation. Future action it plans and imagines the result. If it is favorable, it revels. If it is not favorable, then it again undergoes pain. The pain or the pleasure, as they have not come yet, but mind broods on that. So brooding, the mind is occupied either with what had happened in the past or with what is going to be or what will be going to be happening in the future. Either past is nothing but a collection of the present. The past is nothing but the collection of the present. The present is now, this moment, now. When you say now, before you complete saying the word now, now has gone. The present has gone, become past. Now, the second has gone. The moment I uttered now, that particular time, the particular second has gone. Now it has become a past. Now has become a past. So now is moving. And we are carried over by the moment of the now and we go to the past. Or we are carried away by the now and go to the future. We don't live in the now. So past is nothing but a collection of nows. Future is nothing but a collection of projected nows. It is projected. But we don't live in the now in both ways. Either we live in the past or in the future. But what about now? That is why the present is important. That's why it's called a present. It is available now. But I'm not available. Mind is not available. Either goes to the past or goes to the future. This is the non-availability of the mind. So, if the now is taken care, then the past happening will not be a problem, and the future happenings also will not be a problem if now is taken care. So, living in the now, for that we need Shama. Living in the now, free from any emotional agitation, disturbances, and even to do a job, a task properly, effectively, you require the mind to be available now. Now is the only truth. The moment you say now, it is gone. It is gone. It becomes past. The now is timeless. The now is timeless, doesn't have time. You cannot measure it now. You cannot measure the time. When somebody has a time, you say it is now 5:56, gone. It is not always 5:56. 5:56, 1 second, 2 second, 5:56, third second, fourth second, gone. It is not always 5:56:00, gone. So the now is the only Satyam, but at the same time it is moving. It is moving, making the mind available for the now. That is Shama. For a adhikari, for a person who is in this pursuit, living in the now is very important. Only when you live in the now, your mind is available for you. Because in the now only you have got time. Time, even though there is time itself is a big thing. Time itself is mithya, really speaking. Time itself, the time which is itself is it's a mithya. It is so it is you cannot catch the time. You cannot catch now. You cannot catch now. When you cannot catch this now, catching now will result in the moment you catch now, it goes to the past. So you go to the past, living the past. The next moment comes, you are not available for the next moment. So it's a moving frame. It's moving. So therefore, what is available is the now, the timeless now. The now has got no time. It is a timeless now. In fact, there is no time really speaking. That's why I call mithya. That's why I called mithya. If time is satyam, time is not satyam. It is not satyam, it is mithya. I can give you an example for how time is mithya. Time, really speaking, it exists relatively only, not absolutely. Absolutely, there is no time. It has got only relative existence. That is why it's called mithya. Anything which is relative, it is mithya. It is not absolute. For example, you are watching a star in the sky. Let us say you are watching a star in the sky. And you know the distance which are measured for the time taken by the light to travel from the star to reach the earth. It is measured in the units of light year. Light year. 1 light year means is equal to the time taken by the light to travel for 1 full year. 1 full human year, the earth, the year what is for the people on the earth. The time taken by the light to travel. The time, that much time it travels to reach the earth. How much time? 1 full year. The light travels 1 full year. How much distance it will travel? That distance in 1 full year. And the speed of light is, you would have studied 3 into 10 power 8 meters per second. It travels. That is the speed of light. 3 into 10 power 8 meters per second. So if the light travels at that speed for 1 full year, you can imagine how many kilometers it would have traveled, the light, from a distant star to the earth. It is calculated roughly, it is around 9.5 trillion kilometers it travels. 9.5 trillion kilometers the light travels. That is the distance traveled by the light in 1 light year. And there are stars located at different distances, different light years. Some stars are 10 light years, some stars are 300 light years, some stars are 1000 light years. You see the star now. You see the star which is shining, twinkling in the sky. The light from that star, suppose it is, the distance is 300 light years. The light from the star has started coming towards the earth, towards you 300 light years before. 300 light years before. 300 light years means that is 1 light year is 9.5 trillion kilometers. So how many kilometers you can imagine? 300 into 9.5 trillion kilometers. And how much time it takes to travel the 300 light years, which is equal to how many years, human years? It is around 137,000 years. 137,000 years it takes. And human life is only 100 years, if at all, if you live full 100 years. You can imagine 100 years, where is 100 years and where is 137,000 years? The light reaches you. By the time it reaches you, that time, by the time before that, the stars, the particular star would have disappeared, would have exhausted. The star has gone now, but you are seeing the star in the sky. Star has gone. It is not there, not available anymore. The star is dead now, dead star. But you are seeing the star now. You are seeing the dead star now. For the star, it is past. It has gone. It has exhausted its life. But you are seeing it alive now. In the present, you are seeing the star, which is dead and which is present for the star. So where is time now? Time itself, really speaking, It is not there. It is mind-boggling, but this is the fact. Time itself is not there. So when time itself is not there and mind lives on time, it's really mithya, which is really unimaginable. But that is how the mind is. So we have to understand the functioning, how the mind functions, where the mind functions. Time being not there, the mind lives on time. Distance involves time. We know that. Distance covered in a particular time. Distance and time, they are closely related. Distance involves time, or time involves distance. Now, you are there, I am there. We are having a certain distance. I say something. Let us say I say something very bad, which is offending. Now the words offend me. What I said, it offends you. Now I utter that word. Now, by the time it reaches you, even if you are near, it takes time, maybe microsecond, some second. That will be time difference because it is sound. The sound traveling has got time. Sound also travels at a particular speed and involves the time. It has to reach your ears. So time is involved. I said now, it has reached you maybe after some time. Say that even that will be a microsecond or nanosecond, whatever second, reached you. And what I said now, maybe I repent for what I said. But what I said reached you. What I said reached you only now, and you react for it. By the time you react for it, already I'm repenting. By the time you react for it, I'm repenting. So, the action, really speaking, had not happened now. It happened in the past, and you are reacting for it now. With regard to me, I said it has gone, but you are reacting for it now. So, where is this now? Time is. For me, it has gone, and for you, you are living now. It has because the sound has reached you now. Even with regard to this traveling of the sound and reaching you, that the time, you can see the time is not same for you and me. There is a difference. The moment of utterance of my words and the moment of receiving of my words, that there is a time difference. So for me, that moment what I said, it is now. And for you, the moment what you receive is now. So where is the time for now? Now is timeless. The now is timeless. And by the time you react, already I am repenting. So therefore, that is why even if the words are offending for you, you just give some time. You just give time, some time. Even the words, whatever may be, that after some time, it loses effect also. It loses effect also. Either you forgive me, or it will not make any impact on you after some time. That's why we say time is the best healer. For any problem, we say time is the best healer. After some time, it loses its effect because you have traveled distance, not physical distance. At least the time has gone. That involves some distance. So after some distance, the time, in terms of time, it loses its effect. It loses its effect. Therefore, the now, what is now? That is timeless. And making the mind available for the timeless now, that is called Shama. That is called Shama. It's a very big thing, Shama is. It's a very big thing. So if you have Shama, then you have everything. The whole Shastram, Gita Shastram is meant for giving you the Shama, managing yourself. Mind management is Through mind, you manage yourself. Mind management is managing oneself. Management of oneself through the management of the mind. Because the mind is a seat of emotions as well as a seat of knowledge. So you have to, the person being a collection of emotions. Therefore, to manage the person, to manage oneself, the person also, but to manage oneself, the mind has to be managed. The mind reflects your emotion. You've got emotional mind, cognitive mind, recollecting mind. So the mind reflects your emotions. At the time when it manifests emotions, it is an emotional mind. At the time it thinks, contemplates, cognitive. At the particular time when it recollects the past memories, it becomes a recollecting mind. The mind retrieves data from the storage. Now, if a person is bothered, who is bothered? Who is the person really disturbed? Is the mind or the person? It is a person that is bothered, not the mind, because mind is just an instrument. It reflects the person. The mind reflects the person. At the same time, the mind also plays a role in your botheration. At the same time, the mind also plays a role. How? Like in some emotions, fear. Fear is for the person or for the mind? It is for the person, not for the mind. The person is having fear, not the mind. The person is afraid, and the mind informs the person. The mind informs the person, the mind reflects the emotion of the person. Not that mind is afraid and therefore the person is afraid. The person is afraid, therefore the mind is afraid. The person is having that emotion and the mind reflects the emotion. Because mind is just a karanam. But what we do, we just blame the mind. We just blame the mind. It is a person who is having fear. Therefore, there is an emotion called fear, which is reflected by the mind. In the same way, it is for other emotions also, anxiety, hatred, depression, whatever it may be. It is the person who is having this, and the mind reflects that. So, suppressing the mind, whipping the mind is not correct. The person has to be addressed. Even when you have emotions like love, compassion, etc., the mind manifests those emotions. That shows how the person is. If you see a person as a compassionate person, if you see the compassionate in a person, it is not because of the mind. It is because the person is basically compassionate person. So therefore, understanding emotions means we should include the person, not just the mind. Mind reflects the emotions of the person. And if you exclude the person and just make the mind a whipping thing for all emotional problems, that is not correct. So, what is an emotion? If you see what is an emotion is nothing but yourself, which is viewed from the standpoint of the mind. And with reference to a particular emotion called compassion, you are compassionate, we say. There is compassion. Because I am compassionate, there is compassion. Not that mind is compassionate, therefore you are compassionate. You are compassionate. No. Because I am loving, therefore there is love. I am compassionate, therefore there is compassion. Not the other way. I am loving, therefore there is love. I am frightened, therefore there is fear. I am agitated, therefore there is agitation. I am anxious, therefore there is anxiety. I have hatred. I am hateful because there is hatred. So if that is so, separating the mind and making the mind, no, whipping the mind is not correct. Mind is an excellent tool Bhagavan has given. So we have to be responsible, highly responsible in managing the tool, the instrument which Bhagavan has given, the mind. At least the mind helps us to know my emotions. The mind presents the anxiety. I'm anxious, the mind presents us. Mind doesn't cause any anxiety. Therefore, mind is not a threat. That's a problem. People think mind is a threat. Mind is a problem. They don't take the problem. They don't own the problem. They attribute the problem to the mind. The mind is that's why it becomes an enemy. It's a threat. You are the person who is disturbed, affected, and the mind gives an indication that you need to pay attention to yourself. It's a tool. Mind does that. So, whatever may be the emotions, the anger or anxiety, depression, whatever arises in the mind, it reveals the person. It reveals the person. Therefore, it is not the person experiences the emotions of the mind and become the corresponding emotional person. Not that way. Mind reveals the emotions arising in the person. Because the person is nothing but a bundle of emotions carried from the past anubhava. The mind reflects that. Therefore, Mano Nigraha is important. It is managing the mind, making the mind availability, making the mind available. That is it. That is called Mano Nigraha. Because mind indicates you. So this is self-management through handling the mind. That is called Mano Nigraha. And our Shastram gives you some method how to manage it. Traditionally, religious way of managing the mind. Religious way of managing or managing yourself through the mind. Not managing the mind means you have to understand. Managing yourself. Managing yourself. Use the word managing the mind. Managing the mind means managing yourself. Mind need not be managed. Mind being the reflector of you. So managing yourself. So when I say mind management, it means self-management, managing yourself. For that, Shastram prescribes us a certain lifestyle, a religious lifestyle. Understand the difference between religious life, and spiritual life. Spiritual life starts when you come to Vedanta, when you start doing the self-inquiry. And till that, leading a life, a certain particular lifestyle which is conducive for the spiritual pursuit, that is religious life. All the puja, rituals, going to the temple, doing pilgrimage, chanting, japa, doing a homa, etc. All those, even wearing these vibhuti, kumkum, this is religious life. Religious life is as much important as spiritual life. Religious life helps you to grow to become a spiritual person, to lead the spiritual life. That is why religious life is important. So for Shama, our ancestors prescribed a beautiful religious lifestyle. All the different pujas are there. According to you, your Ishtadevata, you can take up the puja, doing puja. When you do puja, the mind is with the Devata, the particular Bhagavan. So it invokes the tranquility, certain composure in you. You become peaceful. If the mind is agitated, that time at least it will not be, because the puja in the rituals are like that, and you are so, if your involvement is intense, then you will set aside everything and you will be exhibiting your bhakti towards the Ishtadevata through the puja, through the rituals and fastings, japa, all these religious practices. Generally, we call it by the name bhakti. Bhakti. It's a very good means for cultivating this shama, bhakti. Bhakti or the any tapas, self-management, tapas, imposing certain things on yourself. like the control of speech, like Maunam, that Ekadashi fasting and Ekadashi Maunam. I think today is Ekadashi. Ekadashi Maunam, you don't speak on that day, and you don't eat. You spend your time totally on thinking of Bhagavan. That's a very good tapas. It involves bhakti and also tapas. Ekadasyam bhojana dvayam kartavyam. Ekadasyam bhojana dvayam kartavyam. You can understand what is the meaning. Ekadasyam bhojana dvayam. What is bhojana? If you take literally the word, bhojana means food. Dvayam means two. Ekadasyam, on the day of Ekadashi, bhojana dvayam kartavyam. You have to do two bhojanam. Two bhojanam. If you take the meaning bhojana as two, bhojana dvayam kartavyam. Bhojana dvayam. You have to take two bhojanas, two meals. Is it the meaning? There's a pun in this. Ekadasyam bhojana dvayam kartavyam. Bo is bhojana, you have to separate. Bhojana, ho people, not bhojana. Bhojana is food. And bhojana, if you split, bhojana, ho people. Dvayam kartavyam, two things have to be done. When? Ekadasyam. One is upasana, other one is upavasa. Vrata, fasting. Upasana and vrata. Two things have to be done. Bhojana dvayam kartavyam ekadasyam. Not eating two meals. This is fasting, Ekadashi fasting. Fasting for what? Fasting for having certain control, management over your tongue. Because some people have the tendency to chew always something in the mouth, chewing gum or something, or eat something now and now. So Ekadashi is a type, is a religious fasting, so that I can have some control over my tongue. Not only eating tongue, eating mouth, speaking also, in terms of eating as well as in terms of speaking. On both, and both I have certain control. Similarly, getting up in the early morning and doing all the Nitya Karma, Sandhya Vandanadi Karma, and there are Vartas like special Vartas, Mahashivaratri, keeping awake the whole night and doing puja, etc. And observing Maunam weekly once. All these are very helpful to develop this Shama. Maunam is very helpful because when you are observing Maunam, silence, you got time to look at your mind. You can watch your mind. Watching the mind at the same time being non-reactive. You should not react to the emotion, the thoughts of the mind. Let the mind exhibit their emotions, but you be calm. Just let the mind vent out all the emotions, because it is tightly, all the emotions are tightly packed. It wants to come out. It has to be vented. It has to be vent out. No, there should be a vent holes in the mind so that all these emotions, it just come out. It has to be released. If it's not released, it will create a big problem. One day it will just flare up. First, you have to recognize these emotions are there. Maybe it not gone to that much pressure to get released immediately, but it can happen after some time. So, letting out all the emotions, for that you have to be available. Then only the mind can also release. That is why the availability of this time like this, availability of the free time, when you are free from other activities, external activities, and particularly during this lockdown period, when other activities are not there, you don't have anything to do, when you even not watching even TV, that time You just sit, the mind will, from the mind you will see all the things will be coming out slowly. That is difficult to manage. That is why lockdown period has become a tough period for people to handle. They can't stay inside home. Why? Because they cannot handle the mind. But it is a very luxurious time. I say it's a very luxurious time available. Only when that, that luxurious time is available, when the time is luxurious, only during that time only these emotions come out. So it is a very luxurious time available. Even when the grief comes, let the grief come out. That grieving time, even though you don't have any external cause for grief, but still you are grieving. It means the mind is letting out all the emotions. That grieving time, it is a luxurious time. Let all the emotions come out. Let the mind emit all the emotions. We should allow it to happen. Then you become free, then you become light. But not allowing it and making ourselves always busy in all the in our activity, and not utilizing the time effectively in allowing the mind to manifest the recorded, the accumulated emotions. That's not proper. And we think it is waste of time. It is not waste of time. It is, that's why I said it's a very luxurious time. Hardly people get that time. In a day of 24 hours, how much time people get to let the mind vent out their emotions? How many people sit quietly, allowing the mind to let out emotions? If you see at the end of the day, after our office work, when you come, we have gathered so many the experiences, maybe better or pleasant, whatever it may be, in a day. At the end, whatever may be, you have to let it out. If it is not done regularly, then the mind keeps on accumulating, and one day it will flare up. That is why our religious lifestyle prescribed by our ancestors. All these religious lifestyle, religious disciplines, they are meant to take care of these things. But we have not paid much attention. Therefore we suffer. So all these religious prescriptions, they are meant only for our benefit. Vrata, upavasa, chanting, parayanam, even parayanam. Everyday parayanam, what we do, it should not be a mechanical recitation, mechanical parayanam. There must be complete involvement. When you chant Vishnu Sahasranamam, whether you chant Vishnu Sahasranamam with the book or without the book, and particularly when you chant without the book, you may know the whole Vishnu Sahasranamam or Gita by heart. But what happens when you chant? You will be chanting. The lips will be chanting, but your mind will go all over. Except on the text, it will go all over, and you know the whole text by heart. That is enough. So the mind will go all over, not on the text. When you do Parayanam, that your focus must be only on that text only. Even if the mind goes out, you have to bring it now and then. That is what Bhagavan Krishna also prescribes in the 6th chapter of the Gita, when Arjuna asks, the mind is so difficult to control. Chanchalam hi mana Krishna, dharmate balavadridam, is so turbulent. Then Bhagavan Krishna says, Abhyasena tu kaunteya, vairagyena cha krigyachya. Only by abhyasa, only by practice. Only by practice, this mastery over mind is gained. It is not one day practice. It has to be practiced every day. Every day you practice and enjoy the practice. If the mind, after some time, the mind has to lose its power, its intensity. It will take some time, because so many years we have lived like this. So it will, from now, it will take some time. Let it happen. Doesn't matter. At least I'm on the right path. I'm doing it. Let me do. Mind goes, bring back to the task which you're doing. The mind should be on the task, whether it is Parayanam or whatever activity you do. It should be only on that focused mind. Focused mind is possible only when you have Shama. That is why this Parayanam, etc. Even Abhishekam, what you watch in the temple, it is a very great exercise to focus the mind. And it is very nice to watch when you see the Abhishekam. All the 11 dravyas, Ekadasha dravya, Abhishekam is being done, and you watch that. It's very pleasant to watch. And the mind is focused on that. All these are meant for the managing the mind. The mind has to be healthy. The mind has to be healthy. You are healthy. The mind is healthy. The problem is now they say mind is a problem, therefore I kill myself. This is the problem, big problem. The mind is a problem, therefore, not knowing how to handle the mind, the person kills himself. It is not a problem with the mind, it is a problem with you. Even if you kill, the problem continues to be because you are the problem. The mind is not the problem. How are you going to solve the problem by killing yourself? You can kill the mind, but mind cannot be killed. That is how the arrangement is. That is how Bhagavan has given. You cannot kill the mind. Mano Nasha is not possible. Mind destruction of the mind is not possible. It is a tool given to you. You cannot discard the tool. You have to live with the tool also. It is given to you by Bhagavan. The body is given. The mind is given. The sense organs are given. Everything is given. The mind is given. You have to manage it. And saying the mind is a problem, therefore I kill myself. But mind is not the problem, really speaking. You are the problem. And killing yourself is not going to solve the problem also. You are going to continue after death also with the problem only. Problem is not solved. Therefore, mind management is very important. How to handle the mind. How to handle the mind. And that too, when it comes to the study of Vedanta, it is all the more required. That is why we focus so much on this sadhana chatushtaya. Otherwise, you can just give the translation of the word mano nigraha. It is mind control. That's all. That's all the definition. There's nothing to speak on Brother Shama. What is there to speak? But there is a lot. There's a lot to be said about Shama. So Shama, it's an important thing about which we have been talking for the last few classes. Now we can go to the next one, which is Damaha. Damaha is Chakshuradi Indriya Nigraha. Nigraha also here means management, mastery, not control. Chakshuradi, Chakshuhu. Chakshuhu means eyes. Adi means etc. Chakshuradi Indriya. Indriyas means sense organs. Indriyas means sense organs. We have to understand what sense organs are. Chakshu means eye. Eyes, etc. These are the sense organs. Indriya, the word Indriya means sense organ. The sense organs are that which are there behind the every senses. Eye is a physical eye. Take eye for example. Eye is a physical eye. Ear, physical ear. Nose, physical nose. Behind every physical senses, there is a sense organ. There is a sense organ. That is what denoted by the word Indriya. In Sanskritam, Indriya means sense organ, and the physical sense instruments, they are called Golaka. They are called Golaka. Golaka are not the Indriyas. You need to understand. The physical instruments which are available outside, nose, ear, eyes, etc. These are not Indriya, these are Golaka. That which operate behind these physical senses, that is called Indriya. You have eye sees, eyes see. Behind the eyes, Indriya is. Indriya functions, therefore I see. Eyes see. If Indriya doesn't function, eyes cannot see. That is why you see sometimes a person sleeps with opened eyes. Eyes are opened. Eyes are there. Does it mean he see? He sleeps. Because the Indriya behind the eye is shut down. Along with the mind, it is shut down in the sleep. Therefore, even though the eyes are open, the person doesn't see. The same thing for a blind person also. For the blind person, a blind person also has eyes. Does he see? No, because the Indriya behind the eye doesn't function. What may be the reason? Doesn't function. Therefore, he cannot see. So, Indriya is sense organs. We say sense organs. Organs means not physical sense, not physical sense organs. It is the sukshma, subtle sense organs which operate behind the physical sense organs. Those are called Indriya, like eyes, etc. That is eyes behind even the subtle sense organs are also called eyes only. Even the subtle sense organs which function behind the gross sense organs is also called eyes, etc. Eyes, ears, nose, all the 5 sense organs what we have. What are the 5 sense organs? Eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and the whole body, the skin. These are the 5 sense organs. So, behind the physical sense organs, these 5 subtle sense organs are there. And managing that is called Damaha, Chakshuradi, Bhagyendriya, Nigraha, Chakshuradi, Indriya Nigraha. So, managing the sense organs is called Dhamma. At managing the sense organs is accomplished through managing the physical sense organs. That is what we are going to see. Either way, they are got mutually connect. They are mutual. Managing one thing helps in managing the other. Managing the other helps in managing the one. So it is parasparam samandha is there. Either you control the inner subtle sense organ, or you manage the physical sense organ. In both ways, the Dhamma is achieved. So that is what the topic is. Dhamma, we will see. We will see in the next class. So we stop here. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
धन्यवाद गुरुजी.
धन्यवाद गुरुजी.
धन्यवाद गुरुजी.
धन्यवाद
धन्यवाद गुरुजी.
धन्यवाद गुरुजी.
धन्यवाद गुरुजी.